Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes so folks can work their way through the registration process. Hey, Deb, I added you as a panelist just in case if there's any monitoring of the, I don't think we need to worry about letting people in because the webinar just automatically lets people in.
Got it.
So while we're waiting, the clinic is it's a success. It looks like we're probably going to end around with 200-ish, over 200 vaccines being administered. So that's really cool. And ends at 3 today. We're at 14 people. Just give it a few more minutes. I know there are some other meetings going on at this time. This will be recorded. So just to get that out there, this is recorded. It's actually the easiest way to do it is just make this live on YouTube. So YouTube saves a recording so I could share that with folks who aren't able to attend. All right, 12:03, we're going to go ahead and get started. All right. So, all right. So we do this every year. This is the 2021-2022 schedule vote. Each year we do this. We take a look at next year, and I've met with the PPC to talk about the options. We'll present those options to you today. I have an opportunity for some question and answer today, as well as over the next couple of days, and vote sometime next week. So today we're going to go over the process, a review of the proposed model. And I mean, that model is, in a sense, running against the model that we're using this year. Open it up for questions and answers, and then we'll talk about the voting details. Should last no longer than about 20 or so minutes, maybe 25. So like I said, each year we engage in the scheduled vote process, and there are essentially two questions that we have to answer. And I will say that we usually start this process we meaning the board. It usually starts this process in April. I was going over not last year's documents just because we didn't do this last year, but the year before, and they came out, and the year before that even. You come out around March or April. These weren't shared with principals, the documents for the guidance for this year, until maybe a week and a half ago, just a couple weeks ago. So it is a little bit more of an abbreviated process. But we anticipated it coming, so we had some ideas kind of already in play to make sure that if the timeline were abbreviated, which it is, that we'd be able to get this done with fidelity. So the two questions that we have to answer as a staff: what will the bell schedule be for next year? And will we have flex time? So if you remember, flex time is there are a few days at the beginning of the year, during that professional development week, and a day at the end of the year that can be flexed, meaning broken up into smaller chunks of meeting time across the year. We've done it a couple times, a few different ways, and we'll talk about that, the option that I'm proposing for next year in just a few slides. So that's essentially the two questions, and is actually broken down into kind of two separate votes. So you have to vote on the bell schedule and then vote on the flex time. So our current model is the advisory model, right? So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we have 8 50-minute instructional periods. On Wednesday, we have the 44-minute instructional periods with an advisory for conscious discipline, SEL, and kind of other things that lives on Wednesday. And we currently do not have any flex time. So here's the proposed model. The proposed model, what I'm proposing, is that we go to what the district calls Model 1, which is Monday through Friday, 8 50-minute periods. So just like our current Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So that would be the standard schedule. And that we flex. There's, the board offers a couple of different options. So essentially, we'd be able to flex the 3 days. I'm proposing that we take the 3 days and we flex them across 21 weeks. So essentially, really every other week or so for next year. So they would have 55 minutes of staff collaboration development time. Now, for those of you who've been around for, oh geez, when was the last time we did this? Well, you remember the last time you did it. We did it. It was we did it at like 6:30 in the morning. So I'm not proposing that we do it at 6:30 in the morning. I'm proposing that every other Wednesday, essentially. So on those flex weeks, that Wednesday would be an early release for students. So the start time, it's important, I think, to have the same start time for consistency and for students. The end time would be on those flex week Wednesdays would be 2:03, the end time for students, right? So we'd release students around 2:03, and then we'd have about 55 minutes or so of staff collaboration and development time. And I'll talk about some of the ideas that we're thinking about for that time. So essentially, the day would end pretty close to the time that the day would normally end. So if you're coaching or if you have clubs or things going on after school, the time, I think it will end up being like around just a little bit after 3, maybe 3:03 or 3:05, 3 times, something like that. So it's not too far off from the regular end of the day. There are some schools out there, when I was kind of picking the brains of principal colleagues that are running up against a challenge where the end time for the flex day is a couple hours past, goes to like 4, and I think that would just provide or pose a few challenges for us, especially for after school activities. So this solves for that, and it also solves for the we don't have to wake up at 5 o'clock to do this in the morning. So and it fits into the day. So once again, to be clear, the model is the 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 8 50-minute periods. And that's the one vote, right? So the regular model, and then the vote for flex time, the proposal for flex time is to have the 21 weeks of 55 minutes of staff development. This also does change the anticipated first day for teaching staff and last day for teaching staff. Remember, this year, next year, we're starting a week early. So rather than starting on the Monday of that professional development week, we'd be starting on that Wednesday. That'd be the first day for teaching staff. And this year we have 2 days professional development day, 2 professional development days at the end of this year. Next year would only be 1, right? So we'd have 3 full days together in the beginning of the year, 1 at the end of the year, and those 3 days, that time would be flexed across the year, divided by 21 weeks to happen in 55-minute chunks every other Wednesday or so. So what kind of things would we do during flex time? We know that, there's the talk is at the district level of a full return. We know that we're going to have students who need additional supports, not just social emotional learning supports, but also academic supports. So we can use this time for our academic MTSS program. Restorative practices, learning around restorative, professional learning around restorative practices. We know we have our equity team that's up and running, and we've got some texts ready to go for staff for next year. So the professional learning that we'd like to lead staff in with the equity team, this would be a great place to do it. And there's also opportunity for cross-curricular teams to meet during this time. So we have a lot of teams that kind of that span out of the time that's built in during the day for like departments or course teams. This time, when we build the schedule together, and this is something that I would collaborate with the PPC on. Those things could be fit in during this time. So here are the choices. The first option, this will be broken down into 2 votes, right? 2 choices and 2 votes. So option 1 is to keep the current schedule, which maintains advisory and there's no flex time. So essentially, if we vote for just option 1, that would be the vote, and we'd go into next year keeping the same schedule that we have this year. Going into model option 2 is to adopt the proposed schedule, which is no advisory. And if we adopt that schedule, then we hold a second vote to vote on the to pass the flex time. It's a looking at the schedule guidance documents, that's essentially how they structured the vote. But we see this really as a kind of a package, right? So model 1, which is the 5 days a week, 50 minutes, no advisory, and then we flex the 3 days of professional development time across the year, which would be an early dismissal for students on Wednesday, and then professional learning time for us on Wednesdays. So the traditionally the union representatives run the schedule vote. So probably we'll be doing Google Forms. I think that's the best way to do it. So those will be coming out from Mr. Arroyo, and the first vote will be on whether or not we want to maintain advisory or go no advisory. And if we choose option 2 as part of that package, we would vote on the flex time proposal. So with that, I'm going to the question and answers. The Q&A is open, and feel free to. Oh, there's a timeline. I know I was missing something. Timeline. Here's a timeline. June 2nd. Presentation to staff. That's this. So this is also recorded. Like I said, we'll make this available to staff via YouTube and other means to make sure that everybody can view it. In between now and June 4th, open period for questions. So if you have questions, about the schedule, you could send them over to myself, the PPC, Mr. Arroyo, so that we can get responses out there. We're looking at June 7th to do the official day of voting, rather than just kind of have a window for voting. We want to open up and hold voting on the 7th for staff members who were not able to vote on the 7th. You can vote on Tuesday the 8th, and then we have to send these results down to high school labor relations on June 9th. So with that, I'm going to stop the share, and the floor is open for questions. Everyone should have access to the Q&A, and myself and Mrs. Nyman are here to respond. So go ahead and throw some questions at us, and we'll get you some answers. Yeah, so here's a question. Does the start and end dates change based on each plan? Right. So if we vote yes. So essentially, if we maintain the current model, we would I mean, that would be the schedule that we have next year. So it'd be advisory. We'd have the 5 days of professional learning at the beginning of the year and the 2 at the end. So the only one that changes, the option that changes the start date and end date is option 2, where we're going without advisory, the regular schedule, Monday through Friday, and then the flex day Wednesday. So students waiting for practice. We've had for students who are in athletics. So we've handled this in the past a couple of times when we had flex time. I think once at the end of the day, allowed students to go off, to kind of go off campus or hang outside, or in the library. I'd have to jog my memory a little bit more to see exactly how we did it. But we would make sure that there was either a space for them to wait, and or a process for them to leave and then come back while waiting for practice.
Dr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, this was the what do we do with the kids waiting around for these other things? That was definitely one of the, when we're talking with other principals, one of the reasons we wanted to have, if we're going to do flex time, wanted to have the end of that learning time be as close as possible to the end of the regular day. Also for not just for practices, but also for, especially when we get into the winter months, it gets dark earlier, and also when you have games and meets and stuff, so that that doesn't throw you guys off. Other questions? I think there's a model that I'm favoring, which is the proposed model, right? I think we do a lot of great stuff in advisory. I know that a lot of teachers are doing a lot of SEL stuff in their classroom, so I'm not worried about the content of advisory. I think there's a lot of space to kind of fit that into the regular instructional day. I do think, especially going into next year, to have that kind of uninterrupted time as a staff to engage in that kind of work is going to be really important, because we know that, whatever it's going to be next year, if it's full return or not full return, like whatever it is, it's going to look a little bit more close to normal than it did this year. And there are going to be some things that we can anticipate the best that we can, like right now or over the summer. And there definitely be some things that we just can't anticipate because we haven't been in that situation before. Think about it. So 50% of our kids, essentially, right, are freshmen and are sophomores. Next year's freshmen and our current freshmen will have never stepped foot in the school. So never been in a situation where that's been the case, where essentially half the school has never been in the school at all, but they've been attending the school, right? So I think that's one of the things that is going to lead to some things that we just can't anticipate. And so that we just can't anticipate. So being able to have that time together, I think it will provide us a platform to work through things, and to provide supports to kids that we're going to need to provide next year. Other questions? Thank you, Ms. Nyman, for getting those dates out there. Right. So either the start date would be, if we keep advisory, would be August 23rd, or if we go with the next question, or with the proposed model, the start date for teaching staff would be August 25th. Yeah, and that's a good question. So the advisory for counselors case, we've always had kind of students attached to advisories, even though when we haven't had advisory, kind of like oscillate back and forth each year, have advisory 1 year and no advisory the next year, but students would be placed into advisories. It would be assigned to an advisory for so counselors can manage their caseload. Other questions? You're welcome. Yeah, so this is a great question, Kathy. So we have a plan for this. This was definitely part. So the question is, with flex days in the past, we've taken a little bit of a hit with our attendance. So in talking to other schools, it's not just it's not a unique thing to schools who have flex days. So I talked to the principal of Sen, to the principal of Lakeview, who have kind of organized their flex time, and each of their flex days they take a little bit of a hit on attendance. So we'll be working with our partners through SES and our Parents in Action to make sure that we ramp up our efforts to make sure that kids are coming to school, kids are going to each class. I mean, all that kind of stuff that we need to make sure, because it's not that the patterns change, it's just that the number of instructional minutes change, which could lead to a little bit of a dip in attendance. And so this was a big question. So the question is, do we worry strictly about taking that hit on attendance every other week or so, or do we take the hit and provide school staff dedicated time to be able to do really important work with each other, academic MTSS, restorative practices, the equity learning that we want to do. We know that there are some schools out there that don't have to worry about this, right? That their attendance rate is going to be 99% no matter what. So they don't have to make the choice of whether or not they're going to provide quality professional learning to their staff, and whether or not students are going to attend. I think going into next year, just the number of unknowns, and the fact that we as a staff have really largely been more out of the building than in the building over the past year and a half, to have that time with each other, to do the work that we're going to have to do to provide support to students that we've never had, we haven't had to provide before, in specifics. I think next year, at least, that it's worth it. Like I said, we have a plan to make sure that we're engaging kids. Like we'll be working with our Parents in Action, our SES partners, and all of our partners to make sure that the attendance is as close to normal on those days. But I think that the benefits of being able to bring us together as a staff in this way every other week is really important. That was like the first question I asked myself. But I'm like, well, I mean, it's a toss up, and I think it's, at least going to next year, I think we need it as a staff. Other questions? All right, so look out for more information from Ms. Arroyo in terms of voting, right? So the voting procedures in between now and Friday, feel free to reach out to myself, the team, Ms. Arroyo, and if the folks on the PPC, right? So Ms. Salerno, Ms. Magallanes, Mr. Balderas, Ms. Griglak, and I think I'm missing something, Ms. Arroyo. I think I'm missing someone. I'm sorry, it's been a little bit of a long day, so I apologize if some of the names escape me. But PPC, Ms. Arroyo, myself, if you have questions in between now and Friday, we can make sure that we get those answered for you. Thank you. So it looks like Mr. Borges. I don't know how to get you to be able to speak now, but sharing that it was really successful when he was over at the flex time was really successful over at Steinmetz. So thank you for sharing that, Carlos. And with that, I think we have. Are there any more questions here? Last call. Last call for questions. Okay, so I'm sure they're gonna come to you. Send them our way, respond to them, and voting will start on Monday, and we'll wrap this thing up by next Wednesday. So thank you all for taking the time to join me today. and let folks know if people ask you, where do I find the webinar? We're going to send out information and the link to the video on YouTube or the recording. So thank you so much, and talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.